search for a new coach after firing Frank Vogel yesterday. They have hired coach Mike Budenholzer, who of course was with the Bucks before. We remember that. We're getting reports of this.
The other day, the Phoenix Suns made a huge decision, and this one decision was supposed to solve all of their problems. The number one reason why the Phoenix Suns weren't competing was simply because, well, their head coach sucked. It's not like they hired this head coach 1 year ago, but at the end of the day, when you're in a situation where you are capped out to the max, you don't have any assets until 2031, you're probably going to be a second apron luxury tax team throughout the entirety of this core's tenure, and you really don't have much of a choice then to move on from your head coach. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. Now that we got all that out of the way, cue the intro. Turned $25 into $225, $35 into $105 the night before, and now PrizePicks is giving us another free square. All Caitlin Clark needs is 1 point in her WNBA debut, and her square will hit. I give away all my picks for free on my Instagram story at TheFlightMike. You guys have been hitting me up in the DMs letting me know how well it's been going for you guys. And right now, you'll get up to a $100 deposit match when you use my promo code FlightMike when you sign up for PrizePicks, or just click in the link in the description down below. And thank you, PrizePicks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? The Phoenix Suns are one of the most tragic stories in the entire NBA. This team had all of the assets in the world during the trade deadline last year, and it seems like immediately when Matt Ishbia purchased this team, they decided to cash in those assets for Kevin Durant. Now, I've been on record multiple times saying that the Kevin Durant trade wasn't a bad trade. It made a lot of sense for the Phoenix Suns at the time. This was a team that was hovering around the 6 to 8 seed in the Western Conference, and trading for the most dominant scorer of our generation is without a doubt risky, but given the scenario that the Suns were in, it made a lot of sense. So the Suns traded Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, and 4 unprotected future first round picks for Kevin Durant. My issue wasn't that trade. I think the bad trade came later on that offseason. My personal opinion is Matt Ishbia did a little bit too much because they decided to give up whatever remaining assets they had so they could trade for Bradley Beal, another star player that is on a supermax contract for another 3 years minimum, that also has a no trade clause. At the time, we were memeing the Washington Wizards for making this trade. Little did we know that the Washington Wizards wanted to get out of that contract by any means possible, and ultimately they did. I had so many issues with the Bradley Beal trade. The first issue is the fact that Kevin Durant left the Brooklyn Nets, who went through many different evolutions. I mean, when Kevin Durant originally came on board, it was just him and Kyrie and a lot of high quality role players like Jarrett Allen and Karis LeVert and Spencer Dinwiddie on the roster. There was a ton of depth, and there was a very respected head coach in Kenny Atkinson there, although he was there during the year that Kevin Durant was injured, recovering from his torn Achilles. And then the Brooklyn Nets decided to cash all that in to bring in James Harden. They only played 16 games with each other, and they were very successful in those 16 games, but the Nets could never stay healthy. And that was the ultimate reason why the Nets didn't work out. Frustration from James Harden's injuries and Kevin Durant's injuries and Kyrie Irving's war with Eric Adams over vaccination, which led to some resentment between Kyrie and his teammates. His teammates were probably thinking,
hey Kyrie, can you just get the vaccine so we could all play?
Which eventually led to Kyrie being upset because he felt like his stance was disrespected. Next thing you know, this big three breaks up. Kevin Durant leaves the Brooklyn Nets, goes to the Phoenix Suns, who were constructed masterfully at the time, and before you know it, the Phoenix Suns pretty much put Kevin Durant in the same exact situation, going all in on a big three of him, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker, and it didn't necessarily even make sense, in my opinion. I mean, with all due respect, Bradley Beal is a solid secondary playmaker, but that's not his bread and butter. That was Chris Paul's bread and butter. And although Chris Paul was getting older, you now have 3 players players that essentially do the same thing. Tremendous scorers, not necessarily playmakers, and the surrounding pieces around them are very, very thin. The Phoenix Suns had no depth. The worst part of all is the Western Conference is just getting stronger and stronger. At the time of the Kevin Durant trade, the Minnesota Timberwolves weren't a contender. The OKC Thunder were perceived as the team of tomorrow. The Los Angeles Clippers were strong, but not as strong as they are currently. The Denver Nuggets hadn't won a championship yet, and now it seems like these teams are only going to get better. The Golden State Warriors didn't even make it to the playoffs this year. They're not going to just sit idly by in the offseason, or they might just lose Klay Thompson for all you know. The New Orleans Pelicans are looking to make improvements. The Houston Rockets were on a winning streak at the end of the season, and the San Antonio Spurs could pop off at any moment with Victor Wembanyama. But despite all of this, and the fact that the Suns can't make any roster transactions, Matt Ishbia believes that there isn't a single GM in the NBA that wouldn't switch teams with them.
Ask the other 29 GMs. 26 of them would trade their whole team for our whole team and our draft picks and everything as is. Like, the house is not on fire. We're in great position. It's not hard to fix. It's not like we're like, hey, we don't have enough talent to win a championship. We have enough talent to win a championship.
So now the Phoenix Suns can't make any new roster transactions at all whatsoever. They're already a second apron luxury tax team with an aging big three that fundamentally doesn't work together. So the only big roster transaction you could make is firing your head coach, which is exactly what they did. A few days ago, they announced that they were going to fire their head coach, Frank Vogel, 1 year into a 5-year, $30 million contract. And it seems like the reason they decided to do that is they already had their eyes set on a brand new head coach. And that new head coach was announced yesterday. According to Shams Charania, Mike Budenholzer has agreed to terms on a 5-year, $50+ million deal to become the new head coach of the Phoenix Suns, league sources tell The Athletic and the Stadium. The Suns land the 2-time NBA Coach of the Year and Arizona native. So let's break this down, man. For the Phoenix Suns, you really didn't have a choice in this particular instance. The original plan was clearly to hire Frank Vogel and have him focus on the defensive side of the ball while you let Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker figure out the offense for themselves. And typically you could get away with this if you have a playmaking guard such as, I don't know, Chris Paul, although of course I understand Chris Paul was getting old, or LeBron James. And even then it doesn't necessarily always work out. Defensively, the Phoenix Suns weren't necessarily the greatest team either. That's not their strength. Their strength lies in offense. So pretty much you had a team that wasn't working well offensively and wasn't working well defensively either. So at that point, Frank Vogel wasn't really doing anything for the Phoenix Suns. In the case of Mike Budenholzer, you have a head coach that comes from the Greg Popovich coaching tree. This individual knows how to run an offense. And Shams Charania even further emphasized this on the Pat McAfee show. This is the reason why they hired Coach Bud.
If you're going to fire a guy like Frank Vogel, you want to make sure you're able to be in position to get that replacement being someone that could be the caliber of Mike Budenholzer. He's probably the most accomplished head coach on the coaching market, won a championship with Milwaukee. He's been a part of championships. He's obviously a multiple time coach of the year award winner as well.
It's really difficult to grade this transaction because Mike Budenholzer is the most accomplished head coach that is available. He won Coach of the Year 2 times. He's turned around the Atlanta Hawks into a contender before the Trae Young era. He won an NBA championship with the Milwaukee Bucks and Giannis Antetokounmpo. And this is a team that has a tremendous amount of offensive talent that clearly didn't know how to manage the offensive talent. My question is whether or not Coach Bud would be capable of managing the egos of Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and of course Kevin Durant, who at this point is kind of getting a reputation of being a coach killer. I mean, if you look at KD's track record, ever since leaving the Golden State Warriors, Kevin Durant played for Kenny Atkinson, Jacques Vaughn, Steve Nash, then Jacques Vaughn again, Monty Williams, Frank Vogel, and now Mike Budenholzer. Throughout this time, Kevin Durant has only had 2 playoff series victories. And to be honest, it seems like the entire core of the Phoenix Suns kind of have a similar thing going for them here. I mean, Devin Booker has had 7 head coaches since the 2016 season. Bradley Beal has had 5 head coaches since the 2013 season. And I don't necessarily think Bradley Beal or Devin Booker are coach killers. I think they came from very dysfunctional organizations. But in the case of Kevin Durant, there have been moments where he literally looks at his head coach and says,
I don't think I fuck with you anymore.
And got him fired. In this case, to play devil's advocate, I think Coach Bud might be the greatest offensive-minded head coach that Kevin Durant has ever played with since leaving Steve Kerr and the Golden State Warriors. An intelligent offensive-minded head coach will be able to get the most out of this big three, but in a competitive Western Conference, I don't know if I have a lot of faith in the Phoenix Suns big three being able to get past a team like the OKC Thunder, who are even going to be stronger next year, or the Denver Nuggets, who are known for their depth, or the Minnesota Timberwolves, who swept them because of their proficiency in defense. It's more than the fact that this team is fundamentally flawed. I think a huge part of this is also the fact that the West is so competitive and so deep. And I think that's the beauty of basketball. At the end of the day, this was like the only move the Phoenix Suns could make, and for that, I would say it's a good move. But do I think it's going to move the needle very much in the playoffs? Maybe this is a team that makes it into the second round as opposed to getting swept in the first round. We'll have to see. I would have said that the more intelligent decision here would have been to trade Kevin Durant and trade Devin Booker and try to build up Bradley Beal's value and stockpile assets. But at the same time, when you don't have control of your draft picks until the 2031 NBA draft, you can't really do that, can you? So let me know in the comment section down below, especially if you're a Suns fan. I don't want you guys to think I'm coming at you guys. It's more of a cautionary tale for the rest of the NBA. At the end of the day, you got my first choice of a head coach. I wanted the Lakers to hire Coach Bud. So I'd like to hear what you have to say. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.